Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Chris Berger, and it's time for a Berger Point. Well, people have asked me, what exactly is the whole process of buying and selling a house? And it gets kind of convoluted, and it has its obstacles. However, it really starts with the seller putting their home on the market with an agent, and it'll now appear in the MLS. Now, you as a buyer actually will now sign an agreement with your buying agent to start looking at houses. However, a buyer should be pre-qualified. That's very important because it does two things. It shows the buyer's agent that you are sincere, and it shows the seller's agent, okay, we'll let these people come in and see our home because they're qualified. Okay, so what's the next step? Well, the next step is that, people make appointments, they look at your house, and now we get to the point where there's an offer and an acceptance. So the buyer's agent will talk to the seller's agent and speak about their issues back and forth and come to an agreement. And once that agreement is made, we now have at least a confirmation to move ahead to buy the home. What is next? Well, within 7 days or so, the buyer will actually hire a building inspector or home inspector who is licensed by New York State to inspect the home. So now it's contract time. What happens? Well, the seller's attorney sends the contract to the buyer's attorney. The buyer comes in, signs the contract. It goes back to the seller's attorney. The seller comes in, signs the contract. At this point, we have an executed contract. Now, the buyer then takes that executed contract and can now start the mortgage process, which takes about 3 weeks normally. So at this point, after 3 weeks, the buyer gets their commitment, the attorneys set the closing date. One more thing has to be done by the buyer. The day of the closing, they will go in and they do something called a walkthrough. And what they're looking for is just generally anything that isn't up to what they agreed to. 99% of the time, the properties are pristine and all goes well. At this point, everything can be worked out between the two attorneys, the two agents, and the buyer and the seller. And that's my point. Well, being in the middle of February, I can't wait for baseball. Aaron Judge, one of the heroes. So bring on baseball. Have a great day.